Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these.
For 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid of Giza has defied explanation. Not a tomb, not a monument, but an object of precision engineering that modern artifacts still cannot replicate. A structure so mathematically perfect, it challenged the very premise of primitive ancient life. Now in 2025, new ground-penetrating radar scans are rewriting the textbooks. What lies beneath this ancient wonder is not a tomb of death, but a producer of energy. Researchers like Dr. Carmen Bolter, the creator of the Pyramid Code, and Mohammed Ibrahim confirm evidence of high-precision tunnel networks beneath the plateau. So we're going to talk about it today, but before we do, let's say hi to some people who are here. Adric is first. He says it's on. Auntie is here. Hi, Auntie. I'm just going to do the peace sign for her. She's got company today, so she's listening from across the room. Adrian Hicks says, we in here, let's go. Oh. And what's up to the live tribe? Spain Man is here. He says, greetings, Maggie, and everybody else. That's what I always imagine what et al. Means, and everybody else. And Adric says, let's hear it for the dancing Maggies. So shout out to the live tribe. This is the best live tribe on YouTube. Those watching from the clouds, you can feel free to say hello. You will be welcomed as long as you have decent behavior. And shout out to the replay gang. All right, so let's talk about what the pyramid actually is. So, Aswan granite. You ever heard of it? Aswan granite? There's a picture of it. Tura limestone. Quartz crystal. These weren't decorative choices. They're engineering decisions. Aswan granite is used inside what they call the king's chamber, of which there is no body, by the way, which is rich in quartz crystal. So for many years, materials that engineers have spoken on the impossibility of transporting 70-ton blocks from 500 miles away unless they were very, very essential. Not because they're ornamental, right? When compressed, quartz emits an electric charge that is called piezoelectricity. And beneath Giza, pressure is constant from Earth's own tectonic pulses. So why do we have those towers that go down into the earth? We use piezoelectricity today in quartz watches. That's how they run. Microphones and ultrasonics. Adrian says, shout out to Donkeys and Company. Right, because, Donkeys Incorporated just drug 500 70-ton blocks from 500 miles away, just with donkeys or a bajillion slaves, right? We just drug these 70-ton things just across the desert, is what we're told, right? So shout out to Donkeys Incorporated. Okay, so we use piezoelectricity. We know what it is. So the Tura limestone in the pyramid, it is an excellent electrical insulator. Excellent. It's used for energy containment. It's not just a pretty rock. inside the king's chamber. So let's talk about sound and vibration, which we've talked about before. Sound is not just vibration, it's also architecture, right? We learned that through cymatics. Harmonic resonance isn't a theory, it is measurable. So you will see cymatics there on your screen if you can look at it, right? Acoustic tests inside the king's chamber show natural resonance at 110 hertz. Perfect. Okay. When tones are played inside the king's chamber, the walls vibrate. Sound engineers and acousticians like Tom Danley affirm the chamber's shape is an amplifier. Not just a pretty room, right? Cymatics, which you can see on your screen, show geometric patterns created by sound through sound or water, right? I'm sorry, through sand or water. So you string a bow across a metal plate or across a bowl of water. Each sound pattern creates a geometric pattern, mirroring these cymatics mirror the floor layouts and hieroglyphic shapes inside Giza. So sound resonance is very, very important inside Giza. Yes, Adric, 110 hertz is a perfect AC sine wave. Yes. All right, so ancient Egyptologist Schwaller de Lubitsch, that's a name, his studies show that the proportions match musical intervals. De Lubitsch, who lived 1887 to 1961, he was a French polymath, an Egyptologist, and a philosopher. He did all the things. Whose most influential work revolves around the symbolic and harmonic interpretation of ancient Egyptian temples, especially the Temple of Luxor. His extensive study, called The Temple of Man, which was published after he died, presents for its time a radical view of ancient Egyptian science and spirituality, asserting that their architectural proportions and symbols reflect deep knowledge of cosmic harmony, sacred geometry, and musical resonance. So here's some key elements of Schwaller de Lubitsch's theories, especially those that connect to cymatics, proportion, and resonance. Now remember, all of these have to do with what he studied in Egypt. His name is what? Schwaller de Lubitsch. Okay, so Schwaller said that the proportions of Egyptian temples and statues, especially in Luxor, are not arbitrary. They are based on harmonic ratios. And we're going to prove this when we talk about Pythagoras. Those harmonic ratios correspond to musical intervals. So the examples. The golden ratio, which is 1.618, and pi, which we've heard of, are embedded in the architectural design. He measured temple dimensions and anatomical proportions of the statues and related them to intervals like the octave, which is 2 to 1, the fifth, which is 3 to 2, and the fourth, which is 4 to 3. They line up. The ratios mirror those found in Pythagoras tuning, which we're going to talk about, but this was, they did all this centuries before Pythagoras. Remember that part. This suggests that the Egyptians saw architecture as frozen music, an idea mirrored later by Goethe and Kepler. So another thing de Lubitsch said, he theorized that temples were not just ceremonial sites. That's not what they were for. They were resonant instruments built to channel and amplify energy. How? Through vibration. This is remarkably similar to modern cymatics that we study, where geometric patterns emerge on sand or water surfaces from sound vibrations. The hypostyle halls with massive columns could produce standing wave patterns when voices or instruments were used inside. Again, creating the vibration. Architectural resonance may have created the harmonic environments. So another thing de Lubitsch said. So according to de Lubitsch, Egyptian hieroglyphs and temple art encode symbolic and vibratory knowledge. It's a manual, okay? He introduced the term symbolist Egyptology, arguing that ancient Egyptians expressed philosophical truths via myth and metaphor, not literal history. And this is something I say, I'm going to stop here for just a second. This is something I tell people a lot. If you wanted to encode a message that anybody would understand, anybody who spoke any language would understand, how would you do it? You'd have to use pictures and you'd have to use stories. This is how we teach children, right? Who don't have a full command of the language. We use stories and we use pictures. We use allegory and metaphor. And today, the knowledgeable people, especially Egyptologists, tell us this allegory and metaphor is just myth. And that's not what it is, and it's not what it ever has been. So back to Schwaller. The hieroglyphs are seen as a multidimensional language, explaining things, right? Combining visual art, phonetics, and symbolic resonance. So one of Schwaller's most striking observations is that the Luxor temple mirrors the proportions of the human body. He mapped the temple's layout to the chakras and to the human anatomy. This correspondence suggests that the temple was designed as a model for the archetypal human. Interesting, isn't it? Modern researchers have noticed parallels between cymatic patterns created by sound frequency, right, and geometric temple floor plans, mandalas, and sacred diagrams from ancient cultures. Although Schwaller de Lubitsch didn't use the term cymatics because it wasn't discovered until later, his ideas prefigured it. He believed that ancient Egypt encoded vibrational knowledge in their architecture and in their glyphs, an idea that connects directly with modern cymatics and vibrational science. Interesting, huh? So, Giza is not just one and done. Giza was never alone. Around the world, ancient structures mirror its proportions. And they're on a grid globally, right? But this is ancient times. We didn't have a telephone and the internet to call people up and say, hey, let's believe the same thing and put everything on this specific line. How did they know? So the pyramid at Giza sits at the intersection of energy lines that pulse with Earth's own current, energy current. Satellite images of global pyramid alignments form geometric patterns along ley lines and telluric currents. What's a ley line? A ley line represents energy lines or earth grids. Now, this is a theory. It hasn't been measured yet, but these are channels of natural or spiritual power. Notable ley line alignments are Stonehenge to Avebury to Glastonbury Tor, the Great Pyramid of Giza to Angkor Wat to the Easter Island, Nazca to Machu Picchu to Easter Island to Mohenjo-Daro, which is the Great Circle Line. Okay. Now, that's a theory, but what's proven? Telluronic currents. So these telluronic currents are natural electrical currents that move through the Earth's crust and oceans. It's the wavy line one, if you look at the screen, okay? Unlike ley lines, these are scientifically measured electromagnetic phenomena. They happen. These are currents of electricity. They're caused by interactions between the Earth's magnetic field, solar winds, and geomagnetic storms. Telluronic currents flow horizontally through the ground and oceans, but they are currents, so they move, and they're closely related to geomagnetic activity, especially during solar flares. In science and industry, geophysics can be used to understand Earth's electrical conductivity. Telluronic currents can interfere with pipeline corrosion, telegraph lines, and submarine cables. It is important in magnetotelluric surveying. So when they're going to put things under the ground or in the ocean, they have to survey these electrical currents. That surveying is a geophysical method to find these deposits. And guess what? When they used to use dowsing rods to find water, what was the dowsing rod responding to? Telluric currents, the electrical currents. Giza lies at the intersection of the longest line of latitude and the longest line of longitude that crosses any land. Essentially, it's the Earth's geographical center, the center of energy currents, both the theorized ones and the measured ones. Geophysicists have long reported that there are magnetic anomalies around pyramid sites. Again, why do those pillars go into the ground? What are they getting? So, hieroglyphs have long been mistaken for myth. It's just little stories, it's cute little stories, right? But in ancient Kemet, myth was science. It's just encoded in symbol. The pyramid texts tell of stairways of light, of living fire, of sound unlocking the mouth of stone. The ancient Egyptians didn't write myths, they wrote the manual for how to work this. Okay? So why haven't we heard about this before? Why does this seem like it's all hidden and we're not allowed to know these things? Well, because history has gatekeepers. And we kind of know this, right? So Egypt's biggest gatekeeper, pain in the tushy, is Zahi Hawass. Remember that name. He is the longtime head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. He denies any use of anything Egyptian other than ritual. It cannot and will not ever be anything else to him. And he's the head, okay? Yeah, Zahi Hawass, Spain man. He refuses independent researchers. You're not allowed to come out unless you're going to prove that everything is ritual. He calls anything that is not some ancient spiritual woo-woo pseudoscience. He calls that pseudoscience, right? If it's not woo-woo. And he adamantly denies any African roots of this African nation. Many researchers have been barred and banned from sites, including the Sphinx tunnel system and the Osiris shaft. He has repeatedly refused to allow peer-reviewed scans or chemical analyses of any of the sites. He won't allow any independent study. Hawass, this is him, has ties to the Supreme Council of Antiquities and connections to foreign archaeological monopolies. Hawass had a long-standing and lucrative relationship with National Geographic. He made a lot of money, okay? National Geographic funded several of his projects, most notably the robot exploration in the Great Pyramid, which, if you haven't seen it, it's hilarious in that it proves that the pyramid was actually an energy-producing center. That's funny to me because everything that Hawass said was going to happen didn't happen. Anyway, National Geographic gave him a platform via numerous documentaries and specials. He made money off of that. But allegations emerged that Nat Geo had exclusive access to certain discoveries, raising questions about media influence over scientific transparency. Nat Geo was in charge of what we got to know about the pyramids. Okay. Zahi Hawass has branding deals, including a clothing line featuring Indiana Jones style gear. You can see him wearing it here. Critics say he commercialized archaeology and prioritized publicity over rigorous scholarship. And didn't he? Because he bans any rigorous scholarship. Adrian says, sounds like Jaffa's line is always busy, aren't they? Aren't they? They're great at gatekeeping and rewriting history. Okay, so some other Egyptologists argued that his control over the Council of Antiquities allowed him to sideline dissenting theories or any competing missions whatsoever. Their voices are always silenced. Okay. Some archaeologists accuse Hawass of giving preferential access to select Western institutions like the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard, while blocking independent researchers, especially those with unorthodox or alternative theories at all, alternative to him. This was especially apparent on the Giza Plateau, where only certain missions received access to sensitive areas like the shafts in the Great Pyramid or the Sphinx enclosure. And he had to know what you were going to say before you ever studied it. How are you going to know what you're going to say before you study it? Oh, because there's only one theory allowed. Hawass has been a lightning rod for criticism both inside and outside of Egypt. He was openly hostile to fringe or symbolist scholars like Robert Bauval, Graham Hancock, John Anthony West. Also, de Lubitsch, was before his time, but he would have been. Many of these researchers claimed that Hawass was protecting a rigid academic orthodoxy and denying them access to key sites. After the 2011 revolution, Hawass briefly lost his post. Briefly. Accusations arose about corruption, misuse of antiquities funds, and collusion with foreign businesses. But he's back at the helm, isn't he? And thank you for being here, Vincent. And he's talking about the stonemasons. So Hawass was eventually acquitted and returned, though his political power didn't fully recover. However, as soon as they used that ground-penetrating radar and found those poles, old Zahi Hawass had to come out and say, it's pseudoscience, it's wrong, I never gave them permission. He kept saying, I never gave them permission. Come on now. So some observers noted a conflict between his public role as a guardian of Egypt's heritage. Interesting, right? Egypt's rewritten heritage. And his private dealings with international organizations and media companies. You can't keep a good lapdog down, huh? Yeah. You want the yes man, right? You always want the yes man. So, engineer Christopher Dunn laid out the blueprint. Okay. The pyramid wasn't passive, it was functional. And we had the manual all along. And I put these two books up here on the screen, the Giza Power Plant and the Giza Tesla Connection. If you guys are interested in that and you want the details, you understand these kind of things, because I'm just going over the very, very top. Those two books are amazing. I've watched videos on the reviews of those books, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And one of the books, I can't remember which one, I think it's the Tesla Connection, I'm not positive, came out before the ground penetrating radar, but the ground penetrating radar proved this to be accurate. So very interesting. So the pyramid was not passive, it's functional. And they gave us the manual all along. Hydrogen gas is generated below. The acoustics are tuned above. and there's piezoelectric resonance in between. Okay. The grand gallery is not a staircase, it's the resonator of this system. Okay. In Dunn's model, a chemical reaction was initiated in the subterranean chamber, or the queen's chamber of what they called it, again, never a body, using materials like hydrated zinc and hydrochloric acid, easily gotten and made. These would combine to produce hydrogen gas, which would rise up into the grand gallery and the king's chamber. This idea builds on known ancient alchemical processes and the chamber seal design. That's what it was used for, okay? The Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber are known for their strange acoustic properties. We talked about that. Dunn argues that these chambers were resonating at specific frequencies, which is proven that they do, and amplified by Earth's vibrations, again, where the pyramid is. And there may have been some mechanical input like a sound or a movement from below. This is the shafts, right? The 5 granite relieving chambers above the king's chamber acted like acoustic tuning boxes. Okay. The piezoelectricity, right? So we'll talk about that. Piezoelectricity is the ability of certain materials like quartz to generate electrical charge under mechanical stress. Okay. So the pyramid contains massive granite blocks from Aswan, rich in quartz crystal. Dunn theorized that vibrations from acoustics and gas pressure stressed the granite, causing it to emit electricity. This energy could then be collected or transmitted through the pyramid's internal and external channels. Also, why it was a pyramid, right? To gather the electricity. The Grand Gallery is a steep, narrow, it sounds like it's a big open room. It's not. It's a steep, narrow, precision-built corridor leading up to the king's chamber. Traditional Egyptology sees it as a passage of some sort of symbolic ascent where the king could rise to the heavens, right? Dunn says it's an acoustic resonator. It's housing mechanical components like Helmholtz resonators or some oscillating devices that vibrate at tuned frequencies. The vibrations would energize the granite, producing the resonant energy output. The Ark of the Covenant. Possibly, Vincent. So, Dunn's hypothesis. The subterranean chamber is where the chemicals are mixed to make the hydrogen gas. The Queen's chamber is part of the chemical reaction system and the pressure regulation. The Grand Gallery is the acoustic amplifier. Okay. The King's chamber is the resonant chamber producing the piezoelectric charge. The relieving chambers are frequency filters for harmonics, and the whole structure is designed to receive, amplify, and convert vibrational energy into usable power. Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate that. He says, for another great Sunday discussion. Thank you. We'll put it up there. We need it up there. Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate you so much. So is there evidence for this, or is this just his idea? Okay. Here's some supporting points. Okay. The extreme precision in construction, right? The tool marks, the flatness, the alignments. There is extreme precision. The use of granite and limestone with known resonant and piezoelectric properties. Why were they taking these 70-ton blocks 500 miles unless they had to build this? It's not just a pretty rock. And all the acoustic anomalies in the chambers, okay? And the complete lack of any traditional funerary elements. No inscriptions, no body, no nothing that says it was for a funerary rite. It's not a tomb. One of the key pieces of supporting evidence cited by Dunn and other alternative researchers comes from the analysis of a residue and material found in the queen's chamber. What did they find in the queen's chamber? Salt crust on the walls. So they found a white crystalline residue, often described as salt. It was found lining the walls of the queen's chamber. Dunn, by the way, Zahi Hawass has no explanation for it. Dunn suggests that this is the chemical byproduct that comes from a reaction between the hydrated zinc and hydrochloric acid. It creates salt. It produces hydrogen gas and zinc chloride, which gets on the walls, right? This gas, according to Dunn, is then used to fill the chamber system, serving as a working medium in the energy generation process. Okay, so that's one. There's the salt residue, which comes from that specific chemical reaction. The other thing is these shafts that were supposed to be symbolic to that the pharaoh would rise to the heavens, right? Except there's black residue in these shafts, okay? So explorations of the air shafts, the narrow channels leading out from the king's and the queen's chambers, have black soot-like material inside. This is from chemical vapors burning. There's no other explanation. So that's more proof. All of this, interesting enough, corresponds with Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower and wireless energy transmission model. But it's free energy, so we can never, ever, never, never, never talk about it. Never. For hundreds of thousands, if not a million years, there was no line between science and spirit. They were one and the same. But now they rebranded all the sacred tools as myths. They're just stories, just silly little fables. The Ankh became superstition. The Jed rod became decor. Both of those things used in creating electricity. Meanwhile, their modern counterparts engineered fluoride for toothpaste, synthetic perfumes instead of myrrh, and EMF fields that scramble our minds. Why? Because profit depends on scarcity. Capitalism thrives on controlling resources, especially energy, oil, gas, electricity, Free or unlimited energy could collapse trillion-dollar industries. Oil and gas, the coal, nuclear, utility companies, trillion-dollar industries. No meter on your house, no profit. You can't charge for something that's ambient, wireless, or freely accessible. Energy isn't just about money, it's about control. Whoever controls the energy infrastructure controls nations, economies, and populations. So free energy would decentralize power. Rural villages, poor nations, and individuals could become energy independent. That threatens elite systems built on dependency and regulation. There are many well-documented cases where disruptive inventions were buried, discredited, or just completely bought out. Tesla's wireless energy project was abandoned after financier J.P. Morgan realized it couldn't be monetized. Stanley Meyer's water-fueled car gained attention, but he died mysteriously and his tech vanished. Cold fusion experiments in 1989 were shut down and discredited despite some evidence of anomalies. We know more and more and more of these experiments going on. If you want to know of somebody who just recently disappeared, and it is so sad, I hope he is found, look at the creator of plastiline. He went missing, I think 3 weeks ago, because if it's free, they can't monetize it. And the money is more important than anything else. Pyramid theory disrupts the official narrative, right? So Zahi Hawass has got to fight it tooth and nail. If the Great Pyramid was a machine, not a tomb, It undermines the linear view of human progress from primitive to advanced, because they were way more advanced. Oh, Adrian says, I saw a report that he's laying low with his mother. Good. But you guys look up plastiline. What's his name? It starts with a J. Adrian, can you put that in the chat? His name, it's escaping me right now. Super interesting. I'm glad to hear that he's laying low, because yeah, that was bad. Okay. So if the Great Pyramid was a machine, not a tomb, it undermines this human progress, that we're the most advanced ever in history, right? The authority of mainstream Egyptology gets undermined, which is deeply institutional. It also undermines religious and cultural narratives tied to the idea of spiritual monuments. Acknowledging lost advanced technology would demand a rewrite of history, which many academic and political elites resist, whether for ideological, institutional, nationalistic, or racist reasons. Why could it be racist? Because all of this tech was created when the Nubio-Kemetic or Egyptian nation was all Black. Better to hide it, right? Science is gatekept, right? Peer-reviewed science, though valuable, is funded by governments, corporations, and universities, and they all have an agenda. Radical or fringe theories, what they call them, are often dismissed, not based on their merit, not because they don't make sense or they're not right, but because they don't align with the accepted model. This threatens funding sources. Many revolutionary thinkers like Tesla, Scharberger, and Reich were mocked or isolated, only to be taken seriously decades later. Decades. Spainman says, because it has to be enforced that the West is the greatest thing to ever grace the earth, right? And we know better. And also, Adrian put in the chat, Julian Brown is the creator of plastiline. So look him up, follow his YouTube channel, watch his videos, give him tons of support. Okay, so why would we turn these things into myth, this technology? When suppression isn't enough, ideas are sometimes mythologized. So they're legends, they're ancient aliens, right? They're commercialized, they're repackaged for entertainment, or they're mocked. They're labeled conspiracy theories or pseudoscience. This neutralizes serious inquiry by making it seem ridiculous or irrelevant. For example, Tesla becomes some sci-fi character, not a serious scientist. And pyramid theories are lumped with aliens or Atlantis to undermine their credibility. It's a problem. Now, what's another way that we know this is exactly how the pyramid was working? Because Pythagoras told us that. Pythagoras did not invent harmonics. He learned them. Where? At the feet of the Chemetian priests. They said he invented math. The they that are the they. He said, Pythagoras himself said he was a student. He spent 22 years getting an education in Egypt, in Kemet. He was being initiated at temples in Heliopolis, Memphis, and Thebes. He was exiled when Persia invaded Kemet. He returned to Greece, and he taught the math of vibration. He taught harmonics, reincarnation, and sacred geometry. But think about where he learned it. Didn't we just say that's how the pyramid works? And isn't it interesting that all of Pythagoras' theories are all triangles? They're pyramidal, right? So the Tetractys, hard to say, and the music of the spheres are two central, deeply interconnected ideas in Pythagorean philosophy. They blend mathematics, cosmology, music, and mysticism into a unified worldview. So let's talk about how they relate. The tetractys, hard to say, is what Pythagoras said it was sacred. It is a triangular figure, a pyramid, composed of 10 dots arranged in 4 rows. Okay, I don't think I have that picture up there. I don't. Okay, but it looks like a pyramid made out of dots. Okay, the 4 rows add up to 10, which is a sacred number to Pythagoreans, and it's called the perfect number. So the symbolic meaning is 1 is the unity, the origin of all. 2 is duality, polarity, light, dark, male, female. 3 is the triad, where we get harmony and balance. And 4 is the tetrad, which is the material world. 4 elements, 4 directions, those kind of things. Okay. Old school, yeah. The mathematical importance is it represents proportions found in musical harmony. 1 to 2 is the octave, 2 to 3 is the fifth, 3 to 4 is the fourth. These ratios form the basis of the Pythagorean tuning system. Okay? The tetractys embodies the structure of cosmic order, the architecture of reality. It was considered so sacred that Pythagoreans took oaths by the tetractys that contains the font of ever-flowing nature. That's how they took their oaths. That's how important this knowledge was. This concept, okay, claims that celestial bodies, the planets and the stars, move according to harmonic ratios, producing a kind of divine music, but it's not audible to human ears, but it's perceived through our soul or our mind or the antenna of our skin, right? So how this works. Each planet moves at a specific velocity and distance, corresponding to a musical interval. The spacing and the motion of heavenly bodies creates a kind of cosmic harmony. So, for example, the moon, Mercury, and Venus correspond to the higher notes, right? They have closer, faster orbits. Jupiter and Saturn correspond to the lower notes. They have slower, wider orbits. Okay? This idea reflects the belief that mathematics governs the universe, from music to astronomy. This is influenced by Babylonian and Egyptian cosmology, right? But we only credit Pythagoras and later Plato and Kepler. But guess where Plato studied? Egypt. The tetractys, right, to cosmic harmony, to music of the spheres. Okay, the tetractys encodes the musical ratios. Okay, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. That Pythagoras found on the monochord, right, single-stringed instrument. These ratios were then applied to astronomy to explain the planetary orbits. The idea is that the entire cosmos is a musical instrument, that we are attuned to that resonance. Hi, Leon. Thanks for being here. Now, again, all of these triangular and pyramidal theories that Pythagoras gave us, and we're learning about Pythagorean theorem today, right? We say he's great, he's brilliant, everything he ever said is smart and right. Where did he get it from? Where did he get all these pyramidal theories from? Kemet. So resonance, vibration, and harmonics are everything that he learned about pyramids for 22 years. So that must be how they work. We are not discovering the technology of ancient Kemet, though. We're trying to remember it because it already existed. The ancients were not primitive. We are not on this linear course. We are not the pinnacle of evolution, especially with the disease of revisionist history and indoctrination that we live with. How could we be? We don't know anything. There are recent experiments that produce energy via acoustic levitation through resonance chambers and water hydrogen conversion. Interesting. Thank you, Adrian, for saying that. Leon, you're not late. You're here exactly when you're supposed to be here. Thank you. Okay. Grassroots engineers tested scaled pyramid replicas and produced measurable electrical fields. They made it work. Kemet was not some silly little spiritual spa getaway. It was a university with a huge library and a cultural and technological center of the world. And it has left us a legacy, a message encoded in stone. It's time to remember. All right, I have up here my references and resources in case you want to double check me. Again, those books that I gave you to look at are very, very interesting if you want to do that. All right, so coming up this Wednesday, we're going to continue on with the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch. We're going to be breaking those down. Let me take this off and be me. On Wednesday, on Monday, the full text reading will be available on this channel if you want to listen along. Next Sunday, I'm going to double check myself to make sure. We're going to be talking about native depopulation theories and how relabeling is how the depopulation happened. So I think that one will be very interesting. I will bring as many receipts as possible during that one. So if I don't see you this Wednesday, I hope to see you next Sunday. And before I forget, I love you, I miss you, and you're my favorite. Now I'm going to show you a picture of my dog.
Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together.